indigenous language of the Aztecs or the Mayans?
Both of them.
Both of them.
Mm-hmm.
You said it was connected to an old Hebrew,
ancient Paleo-Hebrew.
So does that mean that language that was indigenous to what Mexico and Central America is today was a Semitic language?
Yeah. So what the schools teach you is an indoctrination. You get inducted into this indoctrination of what they want to call you, or what they tell you that you are. So, for instance, our people get called Hispanic, right? So Hispanic, not knowing what that term means, we call each other Hispanics, but that was under the Spaniard captivity. When the Spaniards came in 1492 and, raped, robbed, and pillaged, the people of Mexico.
But there was another stone that they found that they couldn't argue. This is the Bat Creek stone. It was found during the course of an official Smithsonian evacuation. The Smithsonian didn't understand the meaning of the writing on the stone. They thought it was Cherokee, since it came from Cherokee country. They didn't realize that it's actually Hebrew. They had published this originally upside down. They threw it in a box at the bottom of the Smithsonian, put it in the basement. Many years later, a scholar took it out of the box, looked at it, and went, oh my gosh, it's upside down. It's Phoenician, ancient Hebrew. So what's going on here? What is that about? Where is that history? I'll show you in a few minutes, and we're going to have a conversation, and I'm going to show you some more things that the Smithsonian, science, government, commerce colluded to erase. By the way, I want to thank the directors of the documentary Lost Civilizations of North America for bringing these stories to my attention. I was blown away. To find more, visit the website lostcivilizationdvd.com.
This is First African Baptist Church, the oldest black church in North America. The building, built by slaves. The gentleman that laid the first brick laid the last. The balcony hold pews that actually were built by slaves. They have the oldest information in this building. That information is written in cursive Hebrew writing. That information is written in cursive Hebrew writing. That information is written in cursive Hebrew writing. In cursive Hebrew writing. Downstairs, the air holes that the people, when they hid beneath the floors, they were able to use are actually African prayer symbols. This building was built during the night hours. It was also not only used as a place of worship, but it was used as a place to help out on the Underground Railroad. One of the greatest missions, I believe, ever taken out and carried through was handled beneath the floors of First African Baptist Church. There are many items in here that now stands as proof of the Underground Railroad. In the ceiling of the church is a code that this building is used as a safe place, and that code is 9-patch. 9-patch is a quilt symbol that was used during the Underground Railroad to identify safe places. So that 9-patch was placed right in the ceiling of the First African Baptist Church in plain view. If you're interested in getting a tour of this church, you're welcome to come to First African Baptist on Franklin Square, or you can call 233-6597, and you will be welcome to have.
How can black people be anti-Semitic when we come from the lineage of Shem? Kyrie once said,
not about educating yourself on what Semitism is and what anti-Semitism is. It's really about learning the root words of where these come from.
Let's dig into these roots a little more. According to Google, a Semite is a member of any of the peoples who speak or spoke a Semitic language. Let's stop there. How silly would it be of me to say that your nationality is solely contingent upon the language that you speak? Let's say I was born in Jamaica, right? And my parents are both Jamaican. But unfortunately, I was kidnapped and brought to Russia, where I grew up all my life until I was an adult. My nationality is still that of a Jamaican. I just speak Russian. Just because you speak the language doesn't make you the people. And God bless the Hebrew that we're speaking today. The second definition of a Semite is a Jew, a member of any of the peoples descended from Shem, the eldest son of Noah. Now, y'all, put your seatbelts on for this one. Let's look more into the Ashkenazi Jews, the people who claim to be the Jews today. Ashkenaz in the Hebrew Bible is one of the descendants of Noah. Ashkenaz is the first son of Gomer. But we just read that a Jew or a Semite, is a member of any of the peoples descended from Shem, the eldest son of Noah. Hold up, let's go to the scriptures. Genesis chapter 17. Let's bring it back. Verse 3. And Abraham, fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. So if God said that Abraham was going to be the father of many nations and that his covenant was with him, then that means Abraham must be directly from the lineage of Shem. Then the descendants of Gomer are way out of the equation. Let's look at the family tree of Abraham. Abraham was married to Sarah, but he did have a child with Hagar, Ishmael, but the Most High didn't choose Ishmael, he chose Isaac. Isaac was married to Rebekah, and out of his seed came Jacob and Esau. The Most High didn't choose Esau, he chose Jacob. And out of Jacob came the 12 tribes of Israel, the true Jews today. What happened to the Israelites? Genesis 15:13. And he said unto Abraham, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. The Holocaust was literally only 4 years, 1941 to 1945. Deuteronomy 28, speaking of the Israelites, And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way thereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondsmen and bondswomen. Those ships came in 1619, picked us up, and brought us to the Americas. Our people are the only people who fit those curses in Deuteronomy 28. In 2019, this declaration was signed, saying that the 400 years of slavery for the African Americans is now over. Revelation 2:9, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews, and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Who are the real Jews? Who are the imposters? I think history speaks for itself. Knowledge is power. That's why they want to keep you asleep and quiet.
Germany has paid out billions and billions of Deutschmarks and now euros because the Germans have a guilt complex about they're having gassed 6 million Jews. But I don't think 6 million Jews were gassed. Now, be careful. I beg of you, this is against the law in Germany. If there was somebody of the German state, you could have me thrown into prison before I leave Germany. I hope that's not your intention.
I expected to find viable gas execution chambers. And I honestly expected to find gas chambers and equipment capable of being utilized for gas execution purposes. I examined the facilities, and I made a determination that they were incapable of supporting the use of hydrogen cyanide gas for purposes of execution or otherwise.
Why did you do it? Why did you tell such a big lie to so many people for so long?
It wasn't a lie. It was my imagination. And in my imagination, in my mind, I believed it. Even now I believe it.
How can you say it wasn't a lie? It wasn't true, and you know it's not true.
Yes, it's not true.
I'm about to show you something extremely controversial. It's even illegal in the state of Israel to obtain this. And if you do obtain it, it's illegal to show it and or talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, my DNA. Now, I bet you thought it was going to be a lot crazier than that, right? Now, you might ask yourself, why is it illegal to obtain this in the state of Israel? Because it proves through your DNA that Jews around the world have no ancestral ties to the land of Israel. Because it proves through your DNA that Jews around the world have no ancestral ties to the land of Israel.
We Jews have been in the land of Israel since the times of biblical Joshua.
Who is we? No, really, who is we? You live in Israel, so I don't expect you to be able to provide genetic or ancestral receipts for your claims about us Jews, because those kinds of receipts are illegal in Israel without a court order and other special permissions. The Jerusalem Post explains such a thing cannot exist as kits sold directly to the public, going on to say that they have possible effects on subjects and their families. Furthermore, the national implications of these tests could hold or affect, nice grammar, Jerusalem Post, could hold their effect with Israel being a government-recognized Jewish state. Don't you just love when they say the quiet parts out loud? But since they won't let you get receipts for us Jews, I brought my own. Wow. So I, an Ashkenazi, have no genetic or ancestral ties to the region of historic Palestine. I, an Ashkenazi, have no genetic or ancestral ties to the region of historic Palestine. And yet Israel still claims it's my homeland, which I could move to and become a citizen of under the ironically named Law of Return.
Ashkenaz is one of the Gentile nations. Now, 80 to 85% of today's so-called Jewry, those who claim to be Jews in the world today, 80 to 85% of them are what is known as Ashkenazi Jews. And an Ashkenazi Jew is so named because he primarily descends from this guy in the Bible named Ashkenaz, which is clearly listed as one of the Gentile nations.
Today, the Lemba are mainly concentrated in the shadow of the Soutpansberg Mountains in the far north of South Africa. To the casual observer, they look and live much like any other traditional Southern African community. But if you scratch below the surface, there are some intriguing differences.
Here I am in South Africa, and there are these men wearing skull caps and talit shoulder wraps. You would see this in any synagogue in America or Israel, but I never thought I'd see it here in South Africa.
I want to find out how these people seem to have Jewish customs. Samuel Moeti is president of the Lemba Cultural Association.
Pleasure.
So, I'll be honest, I came into this village and the first word I heard was shalom,
yes.
A Hebrew word.
Yes.
How's that possible? How is it that the Lemba are speaking Hebrew?
The Lembas are the original Hebrews, and they were scattered, as you know, and they crossed into Africa. So they were scattered all over. So in South Africa, in many parts of South Africa, you find the Lembas who are actually Hebrews.
Hebrew. So the Lembas claim to be descendants of ancient Israelites?
Not claim, they are.
They are?
They are.
Okay.
We are the original African Hebrew. We are scattered all over.
Can you give me a few examples of some of the Jewish?
Yes, we don't partake of pork.
Okay.
We don't mix milk with meat.
It sounds to me like the Lemba have a unique culture surrounded by others who do not practice the same way.
That is correct. We always believe that the Jewish people who live all over the world are our brothers because we come from the same root.
Could it be that the Lemba are a lost tribe of Israel? Evidence.
So the genetic testing actually proved to the doubters what you and your forefathers have been saying for generations. That must be exciting news.
It is.
I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of the Lemba. I knew very little about the people. But having spent time making the journey from Jerusalem down through Zimbabwe, having spent time here at this festival, seeing what your people are all about, I can only sum it up in one word, and it's shalom.
Shalom.
We've seen how science has backed up the claims of the Lemba in the face of years of doubt and prejudice. The archaeological clues, the DNA evidence, and the Lemba's own oral history add up to a very convincing argument. It reminds me that first impressions can often be misleading. It was hard to believe that a tribe of black Africans could be the descendants of ancient Israelites. But that's exactly what they appear to be.
Brothers and sisters, they are there. We are not lost. We are scattered. We are original Hebrew.
In the year 600, he warned their king, Bulan, that their Luciferian practices had to end. He told him they had to convert to either Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. The choice was his. Bulan chose Judaism. But he didn't really convert. He merely took elements from Judaism and forged them into his own Luciferian belief. Except for the fact that for outsiders they now called themselves Judeans, which they were not. Mind you, the name Jew wasn't invented until the 18th century. Joseph Chagan, king of the Khazars, explained in a letter to the foreign secretary of the Caliph of Cordoba, Hasdai ibn Chaprut, that his people were direct descendants from Japheth, son of Noah. Merchants who traveled through Khazaria had to pay toll, a lucrative way to swell the coffers of the kingdom. The Khazars were different than the peoples from the surrounding countries. They were described as thieves and spies. They were said to be lawless people who lived a life of sin, of sexual extremities, and of cruelty. They would murder travelers from other countries and adopt their identity. They were masters of deceit. And, last but not least, they were said to worship Baal, also referred to as Moloch, a representation of Lucifer that demanded child sacrifice. In return, Baal was said to reward them with riches, with fame and fortune. The neighboring countries despised them. They hated their sacrificial rituals in which they threw babies into the flames or cut them open to drink their blood and eat their flesh, claiming it gave them incredible power and energy. And in 65 AD, the Russian ruler, Grand Prince of Kiev, Sviatoslav I, felt they had gone too far with their continued devil-worshipping and child sacrifice. He decided to wipe them out. But the Khazars had their spies everywhere, and the Russian cunning plan was brought to the ears of the Khazarian king, who, just in time, in 65 AD, the Russian ruler, Grand Prince of Kiev, Sviatoslav I, felt they had gone too far with their continued devil-worshipping and child sacrifice. He decided to wipe them out. But the Khazars had their spies everywhere, and the Russian cunning plan was brought to the ears of the Khazarian king, who, just in time, fled the country with his 25 wives and 60 concubines, all of the nobility, plus an enormous amount of gold and silver. The entire exodus of royalty and nobility went via Hungary to Poland, then from Germany southward to France and Spain. Everywhere they went, some were left behind. In order to reveal their true identity, they called themselves Ashkenazi Judeans, knowing very well that their new home countries would not exactly be eagerly awaiting Luciferian Khazars. Ashkenaz, by the way, was the name of a region they inhabited during the Ashkenazim settled in their new homelands and swore to rebuild their empire. In no time, they built up an empire of wealth and influence. After all, they were the royalty and nobility of the ancient bloodlines of Sumer and Babylonia. They had the startup capital, so to speak. They swore to take revenge on Russia, the country they had been expelled from. Their revenge also stretched out to the Jews, as in the original people from Judea.
So this is part 4 of the history of the Rothschilds. Now these pictures that I'm showing is a party that they had in 1972. It shows a lot of strange things. I believe this one's probably the strangest. Now in my last video I started talking about how they had secret connections within the family that started all the way back in the late 1700s. How Abraham Kuhn, the Warburgs, the Loeb family, the Rothschilds, the Harrimans, the Rockefellers, and the Schiffs, as well as the Goldmans and the Sachs. They basically all came together and started having kids with each other's sisters and daughters. Now anybody that's uninformed, they'll think that that's normal, it's in the Jewish community to, have kids with other Jewish prominent members. But if you watch part 1 of this series, I was discussing the early life of Amschel Rothschild and how he studied the Haskalah, which was basically Jewish mysticism that surrounded the Kabbalah. I also discussed how it was William IX that got Rothschild to become a Freemason. Now this is where things get interesting. because these same families that I just mentioned just so happen to be the ones that met up in Jekyll Island and started the Federal Reserve, which shows that these families have been well integrated for over 100 years before the Federal Reserve was founded. And this is where it gets interesting, because when Amschel was 32 in 1776, he had a meeting with other influential and wealthy Jewish men in Frankfurt, Germany. And his mission with that meeting was to basically convince the other men that they should all pull together their resources so that they can be the ones in control of the world revolutionary movement. You had the founding of America, different tensions brewing up in France, and you also had things going on in England. His plan was to basically have control over the natural resources, the manpower, and the wealth in global governments. And as he was setting this all up, he came across a man named Adam Weishaupt, who actually helped him start what we now know as the Bavarian Illuminati of Germany. So it was Adam Weishaupt and the Rothschilds that helped start the Illuminati. Now, mind you, there was different sections within the Illuminati, but the Bavarian Germany Illuminati was the one that became the most prominent. And it was actually the Rothschilds that bankrupted the Bank of England so that they took over. Now, back then, Freemasonry was common amongst people, but Adam had a different plan. It was to move in total secrecy. Now, in the works of Adam Weishaupt, he actually said, he stated that his organization will remain concealed from the eyes of the public. The great strength of our order lies in its concealment. Let it never appear in the place in its own name, but always conveyed by another name and another occupation. He also said, none is fitter than the lower degrees of Freemasonry. The public is accustomed to it, expects little from it, and therefore takes little notice of it. Now, in my next couple of videos, I'll be breaking down exactly what he meant by that, because I know. So,
Germany has paid out billions and billions of Deutschmarks and now euros because the Germans have a guilt complex about their having gassed 6 million Jews. But I don't think 6 million Jews were gassed. Now, be careful. I beg of you, this is against the law in Germany. If there was somebody of the German state, you could have me thrown into prison before I leave Germany. I hope that's not your intention.
I expected to find viable gas execution chambers. And I honestly expected to find gas chambers and equipment capable of being utilized for gas execution purposes. I examined the facilities and I made a determination that they were incapable of supporting the use of hydrogen cyanide gas for purposes of execution or otherwise.
Why did you do it? Why did you tell such a big lie to so many people for so long?
It wasn't a lie. It was my imagination. And in my imagination, in my mind, I believed it. Even now I believe it.
How can you say it wasn't a lie? It wasn't true, and you know it's not true.
Yes, it's not true.
I'm about to show you something extremely controversial. It's even illegal in the state of Israel to obtain this. And if you do obtain it, it's illegal to show it and or talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, my DNA. Now, I bet you thought it was going to be a lot crazier than that, right? Now, you might ask yourself, why is it illegal to obtain this in the state of Israel? Because it proves through your DNA that Jews around the world have no ancestral ties to the land of Israel. Because it proves through your DNA that Jews around the world have no ancestral ties to the land of Israel.
We Jews have been in the land of Israel since the times of biblical Joshua.
Who is we? No, really, who is we? You live in Israel, so I don't expect you to be able to provide genetic or ancestral receipts for your claims about us Jews, because those kinds of receipts are illegal in Israel without a court order and other special permissions. The Jerusalem Post explains such a thing cannot exist as kits sold directly to the public, going on to say that they have possible effects on subjects and their families. Furthermore, the national implications of these tests could hold or affect, nice grammar, Jerusalem Post, could hold or affect with Israel being a government-recognized Jewish state. Don't you just love when they say the quiet parts out loud? But since they won't let you get receipts for us Jews, I brought my own. Wow. So I, an Ashkenazi, have no genetic or ancestral ties to the region of historic Palestine. So I, an Ashkenazi, have no genetic or ancestral ties to the region of historic Palestine. And yet Israel still claims it's my homeland, which I could move to and become a citizen of under the ironically named Law of Return.
Ashkenaz is one of the Gentile nations. Now, 80 to 85% of today's so-called Jewry, those who claim to be Jews in the world today, 80 to 85% of them are what is known as Ashkenazi Jews. And an Ashkenazi Jew is so named because he primarily descends from this guy in the Bible named Ashkenaz, which is clearly listed as one of the Gentile nations.
Today, the Lemba are mainly concentrated in the shadow of the Soutpansberg Mountains in the far north of South Africa. To the casual observer, they look and live much like any other traditional Southern African community. But if you scratch below the surface, there are some intriguing differences.
Here I am in South Africa, and there are these men wearing skull caps and talit, shoulder wraps. You would see this in any synagogue in America or Israel, but I never thought I'd see it here in South Africa.
I want to find out how these people seem to have Jewish customs. Samuel Moeti is president of the Lemba Cultural Association.
Pleasure.
So, I'll be honest, I came into this village and the first word I heard was shalom,
yes.
a Hebrew word.
Yes.
How is that possible? How is it that the Lemba are speaking Hebrew?
The Lembas are the original Hebrews, and they were scattered, as you know, and they crossed into Africa. So they were scattered all over. So in South Africa, in many parts of South Africa, you find the Lembas who are actually Hebrews.
Hebrew. So the Lembas claim to be descendants of ancient Israelites?
Not claim, they are.
They are?
They are.
Okay.
We are the original African Hebrew. We are scattered all over.
Can you give me a few examples of some of the Jewish?
Yes, we don't partake of pork.
Okay.
We don't mix milk with meat.
It sounds to me like the Lemba have a unique culture surrounded by others who do not practice the same way.
That is correct. We always believe that the Jewish people who live all over the world are our brothers because we come from the same root.
Could it be that the Lemba are a lost tribe of Israel? Evidence.
So the genetic testing actually proved to the doubters what you and your forefathers have been saying for generations. That must be exciting news.
It is.
I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of the Lemba. I knew very little about the people. But having spent time making the journey from Jerusalem down through Zimbabwe, having spent time here at this festival, seeing what your people are all about, I can only sum it up in one word, and it's shalom.
Shalom.
We've seen how science has backed up the claims of the Lemba in the face of years of doubt and prejudice. The archaeological clues, the DNA evidence, and the Lemba's own oral history add up to a very convincing argument. It reminds me that first impressions can often be misleading. It was hard to believe that a tribe of black Africans could be the descendants of ancient Israelites. But that's exactly what they appear to be.
My true brothers and sisters, they are there. We are not lost. We are scattered. We are original Hebrew.
In the year 600, he warned their king, Bulan, that their Luciferian practices had to end. He told him they had to convert to either Judaism, Christianity, or Islam. The choice was his. Bulan chose Judaism. But he didn't really convert. He merely took elements from Judaism and forged them into his own Luciferian belief. Except for the fact that for outsiders they now called themselves Judeans, which they were not. Mind you, The name Jew wasn't invented until the 18th century. Joseph Chagan, king of the Khazars, explained in a letter to the foreign secretary of the Caliph of Cordoba, Hasdai ibn Chaprut, that his people were direct descendants from Japheth, son of Noah. Merchants who traveled through Khazaria had to pay toll, a lucrative way to swell the coffers of the kingdom. The Khazars were different than the peoples from the surrounding countries. They were described as thieves and spies. They were said to be lawless people who lived a life of sin, of sexual extremities, and of cruelty. They would murder travelers from other countries and adopt their identity. They were masters of deceit. And, last but not least, they were said to worship Baal, also referred to as Moloch, a representation of Lucifer that demanded child sacrifice. In return, Baal was said to reward them with riches, with fame and fortune. The neighboring countries despised them. They hated their sacrificial rituals in which they threw babies into the flames or cut them open to drink their blood and eat their flesh, claiming it gave them incredible power and energy. And in 65 AD, the Russian ruler, Grand Prince of Kiev, Sviatoslav I, felt they had gone too far with their continued devil-worshipping and child sacrifice. He decided to wipe them out. But the Khazars had their spies everywhere, and the Russian cunning plan was brought to the ears of the Khazarian king, who, just in time, in 65 AD, the Russian ruler, Grand Prince of Kiev, Sviatoslav I, felt they had gone too far with their continued devil-worshipping and child sacrifice. He decided to wipe them out. But the Khazars had their spies everywhere, and the Russian cunning plan was brought to the ears of the Khazarian king, who, just in time, fled the country with his 25 wives and 60 concubines, all of the nobility, plus an enormous amount of gold and silver. The entire exodus of royalty and nobility went via Hungary to Poland, then from Germany southward to France and Spain. Everywhere they went, some were left behind. In order to reveal their true identity, they called themselves Ashkenazi Judeans, knowing very well that their new home countries would not exactly be eagerly awaiting Luciferian Khazars. Ashkenaz, by the way, was the name of a region they inhabited during the Ashkenazim settled in their new homelands and swore to rebuild their empire. In no time, they built up an empire of wealth and influence. After all, they were the royalty and nobility of the ancient bloodlines of Sumer and Babylonia. They had the startup capital, so to speak. They swore to take revenge on Russia, the country they had been expelled from. Their revenge also stretched out to the Jews, as in the original people from Judea.
So this is part 4 of the history of the Rothschilds. Now these pictures that I'm showing is a party that they had in 1972. It shows a lot of strange things. I believe this one's probably the strangest. Now in my last video I started talking about how they had secret connections within the family that started all the way back in the late 1700s. How Abraham Kuhn, the Warburgs, the Loeb family, the Rothschilds, the Harrimans, the Rockefellers, and the Schiffs, as well as the Goldmans and the Sachs. They basically all came together and started having kids with each other's sisters and daughters. Now anybody that's uninformed, they'll think that that's normal, it's in the Jewish community to, have kids with other Jewish prominent members. But if you watch part 1 of this series, I was discussing the early life of Amschel Rothschild and how he studied the Haskalah, which was basically Jewish mysticism that surrounded the Kabbalah. I also discussed how it was William IX that got Rothschild to become a Freemason. Now this is where things get interesting, because these same families that I just mentioned just so happen to be the ones that met up in Jekyll Island and started the Federal Reserve, which shows that these families have been well integrated for over 100 years before the Federal Reserve was founded. And this is where it gets interesting, because when Amschel was 32 in 1776, he had a meeting with other influential and wealthy Jewish men in Frankfurt, Germany. And his mission with that meeting was to basically convince the other men that they should all pull together their resources so that they can be the ones in control of the world revolutionary movement. You had the founding of America, different tensions brewing up in France, and you also had things going on in England. His plan was to basically have control over the natural resources, the manpower, and the wealth in global governments. And as he was setting this all up, he came across a man named Adam Weishaupt, who actually helped him start what we now know as the Bavarian Illuminati of Germany. So it was Adam Weishaupt and the Rothschilds that helped start the Illuminati. Now mind you, there was different sections within the Illuminati, but the Bavarian Germany Illuminati was the one that became the most prominent. And it was actually the Rothschilds that bankrupted the Bank of England so that they took over. Now back then, Freemasonry was common amongst people, but Adam had a different plan. It was to move in total secrecy. Now, in the works of Adam Weishaupt, he actually said, he stated that his organization will remain concealed from the eyes of the public. The great strength of our order lies in its concealment. Let it never appear in the place in its own name, but always conveyed by another name and another occupation. He also said, none is fitter than the lower degrees of Freemasonry. The public is accustomed to it, expects little from it, and therefore takes little notice of it. Now, my next couple of videos, I'll be breaking down exactly what he meant by that, because I know. So
when you take a look at the actual studies and the adverse events that were documented within those studies, it's now been released through the Pfizer papers and other means, you would think somewhere they ought to put some information in there. So the point I want to make is I think an awful lot of folks are saying that there was not informed consent. I would argue they violated the inviolable principle of informed consent with this COVID injection. I just think that's indisputable. I'll start with you, Dr. McCulloch. Do you want to weigh in on that?
I've presented at the FDA advisory meetings. I've advised companies for decades on this, so I know the regulatory science very well. When a product definitely results in death, and there are thousands of peer-reviewed papers on this, Governor, the COVID vaccines in some people sadly result in death. Some on the very first day they take the shot. That must be a black box warning on the product immediately. I just checked the package inserts for the currently available products, the ones that Senator Blumenthal wants to pursue. Sounds like Governor wants to still pursue these. Our FDA still wants them to be administered. They still don't have the word death in the package insert. As of today, they don't. And so Americans are not fairly informed.
Do you have any doubt in your mind that the COVID injection caused some deaths? I mean, what do you think of the, 38,607 right now listed on VAERS? What do you think the real number is? And do you have any science to back up your opinion?
The best data are autopsies. So in the largest autopsy series published to date, I know because I'm the senior author, of all the deaths we examined, and we re-reviewed them. We had an adjudication committee. We had ways of arbitration deciding on did the vaccine cause death. The answer is, of these cases that came in for autopsy after vaccination, 73.9% of individuals, it was determined that the vaccine was the cause of death. First author is Holscher and colleagues. He's sitting right behind me.
And again, by FDA's own laws, that should be included on that package insert, correct?
Immediately in 2021, Dr. Carol Tassetta, working with the Daily Cloud, wrote Peter's Marks in the summer of 2023 and said, where's the black box warning? Where is it? No word from Marks.
Dr. Vaughn, you want to weigh in on the informed consent?
Well, the other thing is, I think emergency use authorization, actually by definition, when you fill out the documents for the patient, if they read it, it actually says that they should make sure that they are under no compulsion to get this product. And that is what's so confusing, because even though the product was mandated in the summer, at the end of the summer of 2021, the product on the shelves was still the EUA product. And in that sense, for somebody to be mandated to something that they also have to sign to say that they weren't mandated to do it is kind of hard to do legally.
By the way, that's the subject of a couple oversight letters in terms of the whole full authorization type thing. Dr. Thorpe, quickly?
Yes, on informed consent, there was completely the opposite in pregnant women. HHS appears to have captured the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and my research team, including Maggie Thorpe, JD, have proven that with the Freedom of Information Act.
For a few million dollars, correct?
Many $1 million. They captured ACOG. In December of 2020, everybody at ACOG and the other organizations were not going to push this vaccine in pregnant women. In the span of a pregnancy, 40 weeks, September 27th, 2021, you will push the vaccine, you will push it in pregnant women and follow all the HHS criteria. And if you don't, we will destroy you and your professional career will take your license away and we will decertify you. That went out to 60,000 OBGYN doctors. So
we probably should have expanded the title of this: corruption of science, federal health agencies, what would you call those? Professional organizations?
These are the three organizations that essentially govern obstetrical care, not just in the United States of America, but the whole world.
By the way, I wanted to ask you, to what extent are the medical journals funded by various conflicting organizations, pharmaceutical companies? I've heard Chinese interests. I mean, are you aware of that? You were talking about the article written by the editors of the New England Journal of Medicine.
Yes, I'm aware of the study by Wen and colleagues, David Daniel Wen, that was just published October 10th of 2024, documenting that 1.06 billion with a B dollars went to the reviewers of the medical journals, of probably the most influential medical journals: New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, BMJ.
That's coming out of the pharmaceutical industry.
That's correct.
So, Dr. Walscott, as a vaccine injured, do you believe you received informed consent?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, informed consent, and I, as a physician, I believe strongly in informed consent. Informed consent requires true and transparent data. And we can sit here and hear the mantra or the typical narrative of safe, effective, saved millions of lives, but in reality, that's not true. Okay? We can talk about efficacy if we want. Again, certainly the vaccines don't prevent infection, don't prevent transmission. I think I could present to you, I mean, and refer to a lot about safety data, particularly with regards to all the adverse events that I think there's more than ample evidence that the federal regulatory agencies ignored. A lot of these systems, FAERS, vSafe, I call deliberately deficient by design. So do I think I got informed consent? No. Do I think anyone here in the United States in the last 4 years have gotten informed consent in considering getting a COVID vaccination? Emphatically, no.
So, by the way, my theory, and this is a theory, I don't have the proof, it's hard to prove these things, but my guess is the reason they were so concerned about issuing a warning on the Han is, again, they didn't want any vaccine hesitancy on this, right? And also, if they alerted doctors to the fact that if you have a patient with myocarditis, you might want to ask them, did you just get a vaccine recently? And otherwise, the doctor is looking at myocarditis, trying to figure out how to treat it, right? Not trying to figure out the cause, because myocarditis does happen. Dr. McCullough, quickly.
Myocarditis was so common that in the UK and Australia, they actually did issue guidelines to doctors on how to recognize it and when to get MRIs. That's how big a problem vaccine myocarditis is.
Also, one of the points I made is they did not warn, or didn't advise doctors to advise against strenuous physical activity, right? They pulled that off of the one warning that they gave. Talk about how dangerous that is. And also, I mean, the mild. Talk about how often myocarditis is mild versus serious.
Before the pandemic, there was myocarditis. Can be caused by Coxsackie virus. The most dangerous type is called giant cell myocarditis. It was very rare. I had seen 2 cases in my career. One was fatal. But it's in our guidelines. Anyone who develops myocarditis cannot undergo strenuous physical activity. They have to be taken out of sports. It's mandatory because the surge of adrenaline, when there's inflammation in the heart, triggers a cardiac arrest. So you can imagine how reckless it was for the sports teams to mandate vaccines on athletes, provide no provision of safety, and then have them go out on the field.
So why would these federal health officials, when they're discussing putting that warning, that advisory for physicians as they did their kind of weak need warning on myocarditis, what does that tell you? Why would they pull that out?
It was reckless not to provide prudent guidance on reducing the risk of cardiac arrest when a patient has vaccine myocarditis. Whether it's acute myocarditis that we clinically recognize, by the way, 90% are young men, 90% are hospitalized. Tracy Hogan, others at UCSD show that, multiple studies, but there's a larger group of subclinical myocarditis. These are patients with heart palpitations, blood pressure swings, atypical chest pain. Listen, this is water under the bridge. Fortunately, very few people are taking COVID shots anymore. But these patients still have symptoms. A recent report by Koyosmu in Journal of the American College of Cardiology has shown cardiac arrest in people years after the vaccines, and they have found vaccine microscars in the heart.
And we can keep going down this. I did want to go to Mr. Siri, who does a really good job of describing V-Safe, because you actually had to sue. You should have had to sue, by the way, right? First of all, the health agencies who set up this V-Safe, voluntary online report on specifically the COVID-19 injection safety surveillance, right?
Yeah, V-Safe.
10 million people signed up voluntarily. You would think the federal health agencies would make that information just available anyway. But at a minimum, when you FOIA'd it, Freedom of Information Act, you think they would have just handed it over to you, right? They didn't do that, did they? You had to sue them. How long did it take you to actually get that V-Safe data? And then why don't you describe what you've got and why they were probably trying to hide it?
Sure, it took over 2 years, and you'd also think with a name like V-Safe, it would have been designed to actually assess safety with regards to the COVID-19 vaccine. So V-Safe is a program that the CDC rolled out in December of 2020, along with the first rollout of the first COVID-19 vaccines. And as you just pointed out, Senator, the point was to ask people to sign up. 10 million Americans signed up, almost all of them in the first 6 months. This was when there were no mandates. These were folks who were enthusiastic about getting the vaccine. These were the folks who felt it was their civic duty. In fact, that's part of what they checked of why they signed up for V-Safe. And so over the next 2 years, the CDC kept putting out study after study after study, dozens of them, in which it said the COVID vaccine is safe. When you look at those studies, what is it relying upon? One of the primary data sets it's relying upon is the V-Safe data, okay? And so on behalf of our client ICANN, we, as you pointed out, submitted a Freedom of Information Act to the CDC, and we said, hey, this data you're collecting in V-Safe is almost all de-identified, because most of it's checked the box. Please provide it. The American public pays for it. You're public servants. American public should have access to it, should be able to do what scientific inquiry is supposed to do, which is replication.
By the way,
yes.
Quickly, what did they ask and what didn't they ask on the V-Safe?
Yeah,
I mean, talk how grossly inadequate it was.
Yeah. So, I mean, I understand this hearing's about, did our public health agencies do things that were improper? Did they have scienter? Did they purposefully do things improper? And when you look at how V-Safe was designed, I think you'll see that. So V-Safe had check the box most of what V-Safe collected was via check the box options. Then it had some free text field. There were 2 categories of check the box options. The first category were symptoms. So you could check the box for various symptoms, right? And the
Like, maybe give us an example.
Fever, local, little pain.
It's the standard minor things, right?
Right. And so those symptoms, the V-Safe system only asked you for the first 7 days after injection. And as Dr. Shimabukuro even said in an email that we obtained via FOIA, those are the expected reactions. It's what they called almost immunogenicity. It shows the vaccine is working. And so the symptoms that they picked were totally useless for assessing the safety of the COVID-19 vaccines. And in fact, when you look at the studies that the CDC published, people were reporting those symptoms at 40, 50, 60% of them. Yeah, they reported, pain in the arm, of course. But they were viewed as normal to have a little chill, have a little fevers. And so that part of V-Safe was totally useless for assessing safety. So that wasn't useful. What was left? The only other thing that was checked the box was if you sought medical care, if you missed school or work, or if you were unable to perform normal daily activities, and if you checked that you you needed medical care, it then asked you, were you hospitalized, emergency room, urgent care, or telehealth, okay? So that was the data they were collecting. So presumably, V-Safe was going to assess safety by looking at people who sought medical care after vaccination, because everything else they collected on check the box was, at least on the symptoms, was not useful. Now, before I go on to tell you what the healthcare seeking data showed, I just want to go back to the symptoms that the CDC chose. One of the things that we obtained was a copy of the very first version of the design documents for creating V-Safe. And when you go to the last page of that design document, it's in my 66-page submission. Everything I'm saying is in the 66-page position with citations and support. What you will see is they had a table. It was called Adverse Events of Special Interest, Pre-Specified Medical Conditions. And on that list, it had myocarditis, it had pericarditis, it had all of the issues that we now see and people have reported with regards to COVID-19 vaccine. It was in their design document before they launched V-Safe, but not a single one of those conditions ended up as a check the box, or at least the symptoms of those conditions. You could have put in at least chest pain if you didn't want to use the word myocarditis or pericarditis, but they didn't do that. To me, that is the best evidence, one of the best pieces of evidence out there that our federal health authorities knowingly, consciously chose to design this system. It was not to determine safety. It was in order to assure their a priori assumption of safety. At the end of the day, CDC is a government agency. In my experience, they don't conduct themselves based on what folks would call science or medicine. They are a policy organization. They set their policy, and then everything that they do has to conform with that policy, and their policy is safe and effective.
So again, voluntary system, 10 million people signed up.
Yes.
They've tracked all this data, inadequate, check the box information. And what they should have been just making available online, like quite honestly, like VAERS. I mean, VAERS available. You can see it, okay?
They should have.
They should have made that available as well. They didn't. And so you had to sue. When did you sue them?
Sued them. It would have been a few months after the rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine.
Okay, so early in 2021.
It took us 2 lawsuits actually, because we in order to make them take contradictory positions, and only so we sued them 2 different ways, and only when they had no choice they finally released the data after a year and a half.
And you first filed a FOIA request.
Yes.
And they should have just boom, they should have handed it over to you.
If they want,
because they obviously were collecting this data, had to be kind of centralized. Wouldn't have been that big a task, I wouldn't think. Here's what the data shows.
It would have taken them seconds.
They should have, by law, should have just turned it over to you.
They should have.
And they didn't. So you had to go to court, and it took you 2 years.
It took it.
Okay. Then so now drum roll.
Yes.
What did the V-Save data show once you finally extracted it by a lawsuit using the courts?
Yes.
What did they show you about how safe the injection was?
Here's what it showed. In contrast to the dozens of studies that the CDC relied upon to say that COVID-19 vaccines were safe using V-Safe data, where they only reported the first week of what people reported after the injection seek medical care, even though they know that injuries from COVID vaccine can happen well after the first week, but they only reported the first week to make the number look low. And even though they designed the system to collect medical seeking behavior for 6 weeks after getting the vaccine and 3 more instances after that, when we got the data, it showed that 7.7% of V-Safe users reported needing medical care after the COVID-19 vaccine. And 75% of those reported they were hospitalized, emergency room, or urgent care. And on average, they sought medical care 2 to 3 times each. All of this data is publicly available.
We looked at every single office visit. We stratified them according to the number of vaccines they had.
Okay.
So basically we had over 500 who had 0 vaccines, and then we had another 3,700 and some who had some vaccines. And what we found, Del, was actually even mind-boggling for myself. I mean, I had a sense, I've had a practice now for 14 years where parents get to decide. The one thing I am absolute on is informed consent. You, the parent, get to decide what gets injected into your baby, if anything. You should always insist on that or else walk out of that doctor's office. But because we do informed consent, we had a growing number of unvaccinated patients. And what I was clearly seeing was these kids don't get sick. They don't get chronic conditions. Well, the data spoke for itself. And you're showing your viewers the graphs. Those orange lines are over time, over that 10.5 years, the more vaccines you had, the worse you were for whether we looked at infections, ADD, ADHD, neurodevelopmental issues, eczema, allergies. It doesn't matter what we looked at, even just plain old anemia skyrockets in the vaccinated when compared to the blue line, the unvaccinated.
Wow.
This data is so powerful that within 5 days of it being available online, they yanked my license. December 3rd, 2020, the Oregon Medical Board had an emergency meeting, suspended my license.
People want to know, does vaccination make me healthy? And the answer from all of the unvaccinated control group studies to date is no. Vaccination does not make you healthy. Vaccination increases your risk of suffering a lifelong debilitating disorder by over 1,000%, 10 times greater. In many cases, the number is significantly higher, such as for the case of diabetes. In America, 1 out of 10 individuals has diabetes. But in our unvaccinated control group study of 1,428 Americans, we did not find a single case of diabetes. How is that possible? That would be like flipping a coin 140 times, and every time the coin comes up heads. You would know definitively that that's impossible. It is the same analysis for why vaccines cause diabetes. And we know this not just for diabetes, but for every condition that we looked at. Autoimmune disorders. We could not find them.
We're going to go into the childhood vaccine schedule. I was talking to someone, I said the childhood injury schedule. I was like, okay, I guess that was a... All right. So what does it mean to be fully vaccinated? From 5 doses in 1962 to 74 doses in 2020, and now we want to add every 6 months a COVID vaccine. From 5 doses in 1962 to 74 doses in 2020. But notice after 1983, the vaccine schedule blossoms. And that is likely because in 1986, Congress made a law that said that no vaccine manufacturer would have liability for any vaccine that's on the childhood schedule. Notice that they're pushing the COVID vaccine on our children. The only way they can be liability-free is to get it on the childhood schedule. All right, so that's probably what they're pushing.
Message! Sound it out. Get ready. Kids. What word? Kid. Yes, kid. Boys and girls, sound this word out. Get ready. Steal. What word? Steal. Yes, steal. Read these words the fast way. Get ready. Play. Yes, play. Get ready. Must. Yes, must. Let's read these words the fast way without making a mistake. Get ready. Kite. Yes, kite. Get ready. Kit. Yes, kit. Get ready. Steal. Yes, steal. Get ready. Play. Yes, playing. Get ready. Must. Yes, must. Boys and girls, pick your reader up from under your seat. Open your book up to lesson 60 on page 153. At the count of 3, everyone should be on page 153. If the yellow paper is going to bother you, drop it. Thank you. Everybody touch the title of your story. Fingers under the title. Get ready to read the title, The Fast Way. We're waiting for one member. Thank you. Fingers under the title of the story. Get ready.
The pet goat.
Yes, the pet goat. Fingers under the first word of the story. Get ready to read the story the fast way. Get ready.
A girl had a pet goat.
Go on.
She liked to go running with her pet goat.
Go on.
She played with her pet.
Try it again. Get ready from the beginning of that sentence. Get ready.
She played with her goat in her.
Wow. That apparently does look like it is in the other building at this point.
This week, our nation paused to mark the 5th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. The information that the Central Intelligence Agency has obtained by questioning men like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed has provided valuable information and has helped disrupt terrorist plots, including strikes within the United States. For example, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed described the design of planned attacks on buildings inside the U.S. and how operatives were directed to carry them out. That is valuable information for those of us who have the responsibility to protect the American people. He told us the operatives had been instructed to ensure that the explosives went off at a point that was high enough to prevent people trapped above from escaping. He told us the operatives had been instructed to ensure that the explosives went off at a point that was high enough to prevent people trapped above from escaping. The explosives.
I want you all to know, it can't go any louder. I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon. The nation sends its love and compassion to everybody who is here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud.
Islamic countries found that an overwhelming majority of those surveyed believed the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon had not been the work of Arabs. Well-educated Egyptians and Saudis believed that the Israelis were behind the murder of 3,000 innocents on 9/11. One of the widely disseminated stories was that no Jews died in the collapse of the trade towers because they had received calls telling them not to go to work that day. To tell you the truth, I got the Jew call. I had an office in the Trade Center where I used to do most of my writing. The call came from former New York Mayor Ed Koch. Al, he told me, don't go to work on the 23rd day of Elul.
John?
just get back. Get back. You want these on?
They just think there's going to be another explosion. Frank?
There might be another plane coming.
Move it! Come on!
You okay?
Yeah. Please. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Watch out, watch out. I got it.
Building completely down.
A situation that started bad just gets worse and worse and worse. The World Trade Center.
Was that two or one?
Oh, both. Both of them?
You
Anthony, watch me. I thought it was the third plane though.
No, the whole top came off. The whole top came off.
And then the smoke, all of a sudden I see the smoke follow. I was like,
I was standing next to the lieutenant, and I couldn't. All of a sudden, I couldn't see him. We were under the truck. The top came off.
and the fire door on 76 was locked.
Anthony, let's get the fuck out of here.
I'm ready, man.
Jason, this is yours. Look at this shit, man. Can you believe this shit?
No.
You got a cell phone. Oh, God.
Anybody need some water? I expected 8x10 glossy. I know, right? Where are we even going?
We got to get you to the medical station so you can get your eyes cleaned out and I can go back.
Medical station. 100 feet ahead. Everybody goes straight. The ambulance is about 100 feet ahead.
Teams were not.
What would you have done on September the 12th, 2001? What would you have done if you'd been president?
What would I have done?
Yeah.
I would have done a legitimate investigation to find out what exactly happened on 9/11. How did they know who did this so quickly like they did Lee Harvey Oswald? How quick they knew Lee Harvey Oswald killed Kennedy.
Because the people who did it were identified and we knew who they were.
Well, then why couldn't we have stopped them beforehand if they were identified and we knew who they were?
It was a failure of intelligence. Everyone's accepted
No, it
that.
wasn't. We knew before with Condoleezza Rice's memo on August 6th when it stated right in the memo, bin Laden steal planes and run them into buildings. And more stuff is coming out now also, how much the Bush administration ignored the intelligence. It was almost like they ignored it because they wanted it to happen.
Oh, come off it, Jesse.
No, not oh, come off it. Wait a minute. Every war fought starts with a false flag operation.
You can't, in all seriousness, sit there and try and make out anybody.
Okay, let me ask you this, Piers. Wait a minute. Let me ask you something. How much studying have you actually done of 9/11 other than what the government's told you and what mainstream media has told you? I've been studying it 4 years.
I was editor of a national newspaper.
I've talked to people.
Wait a minute. In depth every day for 5-6 months.
Really?
So I know a lot about it.
Well,
and one
then
thing I do know is.
Let me ask you this
then. You cannot say that any member of the Bush administration knew it was going to happen or wanted it to happen. It's a ridiculous thing to say.
Ridiculous. Okay, let's talk about your BBC. I have a tape of a BBC reporter broadcasting directly back to England talking about a third building has collapsed. World Trade Center Building 7 talks for 7 minutes. All the while she's talking, World Trade Center Building 7 is still standing right behind her. It didn't fall for another half hour. Yet they were doing a pre-broadcast back to England yes, it's true, that this building fell and it hadn't fallen yet.
If you're trying to make out the British Broadcasting Company, one of the most respected news organisations in the world, was inventing huge buildings falling over, you need to have a break, Jesse. We'll come back after the break and we'll talk about Israel and Iran.
Are you kidding me? This is a fact, my friend.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Can you tell us your name?
My name's Paul Lemos. All of a sudden I looked up and about 20 stories below, at least that's what it looked like to me, about 75 flights up below the fire, I saw from the corner, boom, 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 boom. Just like 20 straight hits just went down, and then I just saw the whole building just went, and as the bombs were going, people just started running, and I sat there and watched a few of them explode, and then I just turned around, and I just started running for my life, because at that point, the World Trade Center was coming right down, right above us.
But when the Trade Center fell, it was coming toward you?
Well, no, the whole thing collapsed, and it just...
But then the top of it tipped over.
No, I didn't. No. It went straight down.
Right.
It went straight down. Where it started. Now they told me afterwards it wasn't explosions. I was talking to one of the architects that they pulled in, because he was talking to me about it. He said, "What did you see?" I said, "I saw the fire, and when I looked up, I saw around the 70, because the fire was on the 96th floor. So I looked down, and it happened probably 70, 75. I can't be specific. I looked, and I could see the corner, and it just started going pop. It just started going boom, 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 boom. And he goes, "How fast?" I go, "Like firecracker."
Hit redial. Go ahead. Take it.
Just redial. Don't worry. You got to keep it. Don't worry. No, she didn't know. Did you press redial?
Yeah. No, I haven't yet.
Press redial.
You're on.
I got one. No range. I'll make any stretches out. I'll make it. Busy.
3-1 Alpha to 3-1 Battalion.
Where about it? 6. Send. Dial. No signal. Cell phone's down. Sorry, man. Sorry about blood on your phone.
Don't worry about it.
Anybody else got a phone?
What's the number you're trying to try?
631 226
I don't want to worry about
9595. What channel is that, pal? Is it live? 631 226 9595. Tell my sister I'm okay.
What happened?
He was in an explosion. He was in the lobby, and the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
What was it like?
Horrible.
like hell. You don't want to know.
The whole building just collapsed on us inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the planet probably.
Yeah, definitely secondary explosion. But we was inside waiting to go upstairs, and on our way upstairs, the whole fucking thing blew, and we just collapsed on everybody inside the lobby.
Similar to the first tower coming down, secondary.
I don't know about the first one, but I know the second one was terrible. Then there was a third one too after that one.
Third explosion after that.
That's right. Everybody was inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. And they just let loose. Everything just let loose inside the building.
So what you told me is that there was the plane or whatever hit the building, then a secondary explosion.
It was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. Then they exploded. The whole lobby collapsed on the lobby inside.
And it was just mayhem after that?
Just man, everybody tried to make their way out.
Just trying to help all the brothers get out.
A lot of people trapped inside.
I was sitting in the Brooklyn Navy Yard across from Brooklyn. We watched the first explosion. As we were watching the building, I saw a black, very large airplane fly right into the second building. It came out of the south. Right in front of our eyes.
As far as I know, at least 3 or 4.
Some absolutely incredible 9/11 conspiracy theories. The web, of course, is full of them. But tonight, we're bringing one out that feeds on racism out in the open. We were absolutely shocked by one recent poll that found out that 1 in every 3 Americans believe the terror attacks were not the work of America's enemies, but some sort of inside job. And Deborah Farrick found a smaller percentage who believe an even uglier theory.
This 9/11 attack was not by 19 Arabs. It was not by Muslims.
They talk about a Jewish plot.
Everywhere you look, you find a Zionist agent.
A conspiracy by Israeli intelligence.
في اللحظات نفسها.
Or by Zionist moles in the Bush administration, allegedly calling the shots in the Middle East. Websites, magazines, documentaries, radio programs, dozens of them disputing the facts that Al-Qaeda was behind the 9/11 attacks.
It was done by a group of Zionists.
Are you suggesting that Al-Qaeda had nothing to do with it, that this was all part of a large conspiracy, Zionist or otherwise?
Al-Qaeda is, in my opinion, has been exploited. I question whether such a group even exists.
Chicago writer Christopher Bolin is one of the conspiracy theorists.
I believe that there are Israeli elements that are connected to the Mossad that are involved in this attack.
There's no physical evidence to support claims that Jews were behind 9/11. But the speculation and rumors, mostly discounted here in the U.S., have gained momentum in Muslim countries, where they're discussed and believed. Deborah Lauder is with the Jewish-run Anti-Defamation League.
What's most troubling is when it reaches the internet and goes into the Muslim Arab world, we have this cross-fertilization of hate, and this is something we've never seen before.
A whole web of beliefs has grown to support this conspiracy theory. Listen to these Americans interviewed on Iranian television.
This is a big plot to take control of us, to start war.
One of the beliefs is that some 4,000 Israelis or Jews in the New York City area were warned by instant messages not to go to work on 9/11. For Wilton Sexer, a retired police sergeant who is Jewish, the claim is outrageous.
The remains consisted of a piece of bone, 2.5 inches long and about 1 inch long, about the size of your index finger.
And that's all they ever found?
That's all they ever found.
Sexer's son Jason died in the towers. He says Jason received no warning. Neither did some 400 Jews who died in the tragedy.
Give me the names of the 4,000 Jews who stayed home. Show me something. There is nothing to show. This is a total, ridiculous, asinine rumor that was started.
Suspects in the September 11th attacks may have managed to stay ahead of them by knowing who and when investigators are calling on the telephone. How? By obtaining and analyzing data that's generated every time someone in the U.S. makes a phone call.
One sitting in city, please.
Here's how the system works. Most directory assistance calls and virtually all call records and billing in the U.S. are done for the phone companies by Amdocs Limited, an Israeli-based private telecommunications company. Amdocs has contracts with the 25 biggest phone companies in America and more worldwide. The White House and other secure government phone lines are protected, but it is virtually impossible to make a call on normal phones without generating an Amdocs record of it. In recent years, the FBI and other government agencies have investigated Amdocs more than once. The firm has repeatedly and adamantly denied any security breaches or wrongdoing. But sources tell Fox News that in 1999, the super-secret National Security Agency, headquartered in northern Maryland, issued what's called a top-secret, sensitive, compartmentalized information report, TSSCI, warning that records of calls in the United States were getting into foreign hands, in Israel in particular. Investigators do not believe calls are being listened to, but the data about who's calling whom and when is plenty valuable in itself. An internal Amdocs memo to senior company executives suggests just how Amdocs-generated call records could be used. Quote, widespread data mining techniques and algorithms, combining both the properties of the customer, like credit rating, and properties of the specific behavior such as whom the customers are calling. The Amdocs memo says the system should be used to prevent phone fraud, but U.S. counterintelligence analysts say it could also be used to spy through the phone system.
On the morning of 9/11, a group of 5 Israeli nationals purported to have witnessed the initial explosion of the World Trade Center and were seen to be celebrating the event.
Fox News has learned some U.S. investigators believe that there are Israelis again very much engaged in spying in and on the U.S., who may have known things they didn't tell us before September 11th.
It is true that some in Israel saw the attack as a good thing for them. A September 12, 2001 article in the New York Times quotes now Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responding to the 9/11 attacks. Quote, it is very good, before adding, well, not very good, but it will generate immediate sympathy. According to FBI documents, the Israelis caught celebrating the 9/11 attacks had videotaped the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center and may have possessed foreknowledge of the same. When the Israelis were arrested in New Jersey, they were carrying photos of themselves smiling with the World Trade Center burning in the background.
Well, big catastrophe, and I'm Israeli, and I hope that now people understand what we have to deal with, the kind of people that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
It began when this woman was watching the Twin Towers burning from her apartment in New Jersey. She noticed 3 men on top of a van, posing for pictures with the towers burning in the background.
And I could see that they were like happy. You know, they didn't look shocked to me. You know, they didn't look shocked. I thought it was very strange.
The witness called police, who stopped the van hours later and arrested 5 men. All 5, it turns out, were Israeli. They were turned over to the FBI. Sources tell ABC News during a check of national security databases, some of the men were listed as having had connections with Israeli intelligence. At the FBI, that set off alarm bells. The FBI needed the answers to 3 important questions. Who were these men? What brought them to that parking lot on the morning of September 11th? And did they have any advance knowledge of what was going to happen that day? They said they worked for a company called Urban Moving. The FBI obtained a search warrant for the company's offices.
2 SUVs were filled up with between 9 and 12 boxes and computers.
Not long after the arrests, the offices of Urban Moving were simply abandoned. Almost everything was left behind. In jail, the 5 Israelis were repeatedly interrogated and given lie detector tests. Stephen Gordon was their American lawyer.
They were asked questions if they had ever been approached by or hired by any non-United States intelligence community.
While there is still some debate among American intelligence officials, many investigators believe some of the men were part of an Israeli operation aimed at monitoring radical Islamic charities that support groups like Hamas, something lawyers for the 5 men and the Israeli government strongly deny.
And at that point, we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is, we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event. Our purpose was to document the event.
Am I being anti-Semitic if I say that the United States taxpayers should not supply more weapons to Israel?
That statement alone is not anti-Semitic. It does not attack Jewish identity.
Rabbi?
Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two...
Hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the
God's
descendants of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is.
And I'm really happy he said that, because when you hear it, you realize how ridiculous it sounds. Even if you're not following the theology, if you don't identify as a Christian, you realize that you have a senator that is sitting across saying that his number one reason, he didn't say one of the reasons, he said my number one reason that I support Israel is because the Bible commands me to do so. And just so you know, the Bible does not command, and this is what Tucker Carlson is getting to in that clip, it absolutely does not command you to support the modern state of Israel. Like Genesis is pointing to the modern 1948 created state of Israel, and you must support it, despite the fact that it is very much involved in what can only be described as demonic behavior since its creation, right? And so you're going to ignore every other biblical passage. You're going to misinterpret this one. It's a dispensationalist heresy, which was factually funded by the World Zionist Congress. And we can do another episode on that as I present to you guys all of the evidence that what it guided the notations. This really stems from the Schofield Bible, the heresy of the Schofield Bible. Schofield himself was an absolute fraud who got funded and was overseas and alleges that he wrote all of these notes in the Bible and is telling people how to read their Bibles. The first time that notations were put underneath the passages. So this is what Genesis says, and this is what it means. And this is how this heresy arrived in America. Then somehow this guy is able to, it becomes the most printed book, and Oxford Press gets behind it because like a random pastor, you get the idea here. It was very much a funded effort to have Christians misunderstand the Bible. And Ted Cruz is one of these Christians.
Great guy. He's a good guy. He's a friend of mine.
Larry Silverstein is a terrific owner in New York and a very good friend of mine who I just called. I was very worried about him because I assumed maybe he was in the building. He took possession of the building 1 week ago. As you know, he just bought the World Trade Center.
Right.
And he was in his office, and he was getting ready to move into the World Trade Center over the next 2 weeks. So when I just spoke...
and they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
It takes demolition experts weeks to prepare for the destruction of a building. How do they do it on 9/11 in just a few hours?
Well, the term pulling, of course, in construction means take it down by controlled demolition. This building came down perfectly symmetrical, fell into its own footprint. Absolutely crystal clear that that is what happened to World Trade Center 7.
Collapses of the Twin Towers and Building Number 7 had to have been examples of controlled demolition, brought about by thousands of explosives placed throughout each of the buildings. No foreign terrorist could have obtained the kind of access to the buildings this would have required.
It's pretty clear, if you look at it, that this is an inside job, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's overwhelming when you...
And these charges and controlled demolitions take weeks of planning. They have to bring in experts and do a structural analysis of the buildings, study which beams, which girders have to have charges placed on them. And then a team of explosive experts has to come and set the charges, wire them all together in sequence. And then, finally, after everything is clear, they let the building go. Or
I had the pleasure of working pretty much with every prime minister of Israel, from Yitzhak Shamir forward. I said to myself, wouldn't it be fantastic if I could own the Twin Towers? We got very, very lucky. The governor of New York, George Pataki, decided one day that maybe it would be good to privatize the ownership of the World Trade Center. So I got a call from the governor's office, and they said, would you ever consider owning the World Trade Center? It was very, very good for the family, very good for us, and we were very, very fortunate. On the morning of 9/11, I'm getting ready, getting dressed to go to the dermatologist. I have light-colored hair, light skin. The sun is a disaster for me. I can't take the sun. She said, okay, but you're going to the dermatologist, you're going this morning, and you're not going downtown. We got very, very lucky. And I had an obligation to collect the insurance proceeds from the policies. A new governor was just elected, Elliot Spitzer, an old friend who I knew well. And I said, Elliot, if you don't help me, I'll never collect from the insurance companies. And guess what? He listened, and he said, you know what? You're entitled. I'm going to get you the money. And in 6 months, he got me the $4.5 billion. We got very, very lucky.
Just a bit of history. Why did you want to have the World Trade Center? What was it about the Trade Center for you as a real estate man that was important?
I think I might need deep psychoanalysis to fully understand and respond to that question. I remember looking up at the Twin Towers, and here is this major edifice that I just completed. The Twin Towers dwarfed it by huge magnitudes. And I thought to myself, my goodness, wouldn't it be wonderful to someday own that real estate? And so when, years later, when it was decided that the port would exit the daily operation of Port Authority. I was approached by the Port Authority and asked if I would have an interest in competing for the opportunity. And my immediate response, without hesitation, was of course. And therein started the odyssey, which I think commenced in either, I think it was 99 or 2000, finally culminated in the bidding process. And I remember it coming to a head. I think the last and final bid was due on the 30th of January of 2001. And this is months and months of work and millions of dollars worth of expenditure of time and effort, analysis, and so forth. And as I was crossing the street, walking up Madison Avenue, at 57th Street, walking to 59th Street between Madison and Park, where I live, I was hit by a car being driven by a drunk driver who ran the light. I ended up with a broken pelvis, smashed in a number of places, the most excruciating pain of my life, and ended up in the hospital, of course. I remember lying there and saying to myself, how much time do I have, right? This is the 25th of December, or January rather, and the bid is due on the 30th of January. So I remember saying to myself, finally saying to the doctors, you know, can you reduce the morphine? I've got to think, I've got to get more people to get here. I've got to think this through and submit the bid, because I can't stop now. It's too much was at stake. And believe it or not, they reduced the dosage of morphine. We framed the bid and ultimately won it. And the prize, therefore, if you will, and signed the documents and took title to the buildings, the leasehold, 99-year leasehold. And we did so, I think it was the 26th day of July of 2001. And of course, 6 odd weeks thereafter. 6 weeks thereafter, disaster struck, and it was it was certainly a defining moment in the lives of New Yorkers in general and many, many people around the world.
Where were you on September 11th?
I was home. And the only reason I wasn't where I was every morning subsequent to the 26th day of July, my mornings were spent usually at a breakfast meeting at Windows, an 8 o'clock breakfast meeting, Windows, the top of it, and then going down to visit with my tenants, my new tenants, at the Trade Center, getting to know them, understanding their problems and so forth, ascertaining how we could service their needs better, which is one of the first things you do when you acquire a property. You begin to meet your tenants and start talking with them. And so my mornings were spent at the Trade Center, and then by noon I was back uptown. And so that particular morning, because I have light-colored hair and fair skin, and I'm an annuity to the dermatologist, my wife, God bless her, had made an appointment for me at the doctor. And I remember dressing to go to the doctor. I'm finally saying to my wife, I said, sweetheart, I've got so much to do downtown. I got to cancel this. I've got to go downtown. And she said, you're not going to cancel this appointment. You're going to the dermatologist. And, having been married now to the same woman for 46 years, you get this sense of determination on occasion, their voices. And I said, okay, yes, dear, I'll go. And then just minutes later, received a telephone call to turn on a television set and witnessed this horrendous circumstance. The first plane hitting, and then the second plane hitting. Of course, with the second hit, it became obvious that this was terrorism. But thereafter was absolute hell because so many of our people were down there. We were in occupancy, temporary occupancy of the 88th floor of the North Tower prior to moving permanently into the 91st floor of the North Tower. And so my children, two of my children, Roger and Lisa, both work with me. They were on their way to work at 9 o'clock. Many others, about 100 people with us on their way to work. And as it turns out, had the plane struck 15 minutes later, our firm would have been decimated. As it is, we lost 4 of our people, 2 of whom I had hired just a few weeks prior to that. And there are 6 children among them, and it was a horrendous experience.
There is now a lawsuit, and it is said the legal question is whether this was one incident or 2. Where does that stand? Because the answer to that question means billions of dollars.
It does. And it is the magnitude of the dollars here is huge. One event is 3.55 billion, and 2 events comes to, in this case, 6.7 billion. And so we are waging a battle against the insurers who would like to avoid paying as much as they can possibly avoid. Because the money, it's the only source of money available for a building, the Trade Center. There's no other source. Monies from the federal government are all being used for other purposes, infrastructure and a whole range of other needs, humanitarian needs. And so because we're obligated under the ground lease to pay a rental of $120 million a year. And because we're obligated under that ground lease to rebuild, put back the 10 million feet of space, the million square feet of, and the retail space below it and so forth, we simply recognized early on the need to demand that the insurers fulfill their responsibility under the policies. And so we early on asserted multiple events because in this instance we had 2 different planes hitting two separate towers at two separate time frames, bringing each tower down independently of the other at two different time frames. Separate fire in the North Tower, separate fire in the South Tower, bringing down those towers. And so we are now finding ourselves in this furious legal confrontation with the insurers who are resisting with every possible
How long will
maneuver.
that drag out?
Well, interestingly, the issue of multiple events or one event is going to be heard in the Federal Appeals Court here in the Second Circuit. I think the oral argument is taking place the week of the 14th of April, this coming April. Shortly after the argument, the court will render a decision.
One event or two.
One event or two. The Attorney General filed an amicus, Attorney General of the State of New York filed an amicus brief on our behalf saying clearly the law is clear, it's unambiguous, this is multiple events. If you understand the law, if you understand the legal precedents, I think the most pregnant case in this matter, if you will, a similar set of circumstances in which a crazed American set fire to 4 courthouses in California, and the fires he set were almost simultaneously set, and in that instance, the policy was covered by travelers. Right. And the Travelers Policy Forum, as the case with us. We also have travelers covering our towers with the same policy forum. And in California, travelers argued the law is clear and unambiguous. They said it has nothing to do with one crazed mind, one plan, and one person. They said the law is clearly what is the proximate cause of the loss. And they said in California, 4 separate fires brought down 4 separate buildings, and therefore it's multiple events. And the federal courts in California so held, and on behalf of travelers, they agreed it was multiple events. Now here in New York, they're coming in and arguing just the opposite. Now, you might say, why? Well, in California, they were on the primary coverage, on the lower coverage. Therefore, multiple, they wouldn't pay the amounts that otherwise they would have to pay. They did very well in California. In New York, it's just the reverse. In New York, they're on the multiple layers, not on the lower.
You believe you win this thing?
Well, the law is the same in California, New York. It's the law of the land. And the answer is, most assuredly, yes, we're going to win multiple.
Who do you think did 9/11?
Us.
So why did America do it?
To finish Bush 1's job.
Where'd you read this?
I served 11 years in
Where in the military were you?
Syria.
Yeah, I want the full conspiracy. Let's go.
I was at the VA a year and a half after an operation that we went to. Breaking news, the operation that we did a year and a half ago popped up on the news. I immediately went to go check, and I'm like, is this modern? And they said, yes. And I said, no, it's not. I need to go talk to mental health, because I was there when that happened.
Oh, so you go and say, like, what's on the news isn't true.
Yes.
Am I going crazy?
Yeah, and it broke my whole reality.
He cannot stop drinking. I think he's telling the truth. Why did you just drag us into this nightmare? Is the Bermuda Triangle real?
Yes, but it's because of a series of wins, not anything else.
Nerd alert.
What's the most dangerous lie the U.S. government is still telling the public?
The Israelis are not our friends. The FBI has been able to identify 187 undeclared Mossad agents spread all around the United States to steal secrets from our defense contractors. Now, we give the Israelis 99% of the technology that we have. They're trying to steal that last 1%. I'll give you an example. We went to the Israelis. We said, look, we're developing this new fighter called the F-35. It's going to be the best fighter. They said, we want it. We said, great, we'll give them to you. We're going to call yours the F-35I, I for Israel. And what we're going to do is we're going to very slightly degrade the avionics. So, God forbid, if one of them gets shot down, the Iranians or the Russians or the Chinese can't get the avionics. They said, no, we want the F-35. We said, no, we're not going to give it to you. Well, the Israelis are in Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Martin and Boeing and every other defense contractor in America trying to steal every one of our defense secrets to upgrade the avionics to have at least what we have and more.
Who did you not at all trust, even though you had to work with them?
The Israelis.
You didn't trust them?
Not as far as I could throw them.
You, or was that a cultural thing?
It was cultural. We don't allow the Israelis into CIA headquarters because they would always come with gifts, and the gifts had always listening devices packed inside them. And you know, somebody brings you a gift, you x-ray it. It's the normal process. And we're like, you guys can't keep coming back here every single time trying to bug our conference rooms. So no more. So,
and was it easy to x-ray and see that they had bugs in them?
Yeah.
What percentage of the time did gifts have bugs in them?
100%.
Be quiet.
No, seriously.
Are you kidding me?
Absolutely not. I wish I was.
100% of the time they brought gifts that had bugs in them.
Yeah. And we're like, okay, no more. You can't come on campus anymore.
Will you guys joke about it with them? You're like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What is this?
We
So
would
was
say,
it like a joke?
Come on, you guys. No, they were serious. They were hoping one would slip through.
They are the only high-rise buildings in the world that have ever come down from an airplane hitting them. And those buildings, I read the report from the architect who designed them. They were designed to withstand an airplane hitting the building and standing tall.
And especially Building 7, which had no plane hit it. Right.
No plane hit it. And the building just, you can see it when you watch it on TV, it just implodes straight down. And what really got me again was Oriol Palmer, the Italian chief, arising on the...
Well, tell us who he was. What is...
Okay, Oriol Palmer was one of the most inspirational battalion chiefs in New York.
FDNY.
FDNY, who immediately, in very good shape, had a family, a couple of kids, went into the building as soon as they got on the scene, took the elevator up to the 40th floor, got off the elevator, and you could hear him on the comm system say, I'm here, 40th floor, we're going to start walking up the stairwells. Every 5 floors, he radios back to communication. I'm on the 50th floor. Everything's okay. We're on floor 60. Everything's okay. He's going up. Every so many floors, he gives a report. He reaches the 78th floor, the floor of impact. He comes out of the stair tower. And as clear as you listening to me here, and I know I get passionate and I apologize to your listeners for that. He says, we're on floor 78, the floor of impact. We've got 2 fires and we can handle them. 1 minute later, the whole building collapses. That's not normal. That is not acceptable. That is not what happened.
And this is on tape?
It's on tape. The film is called Bravo 7. And if your viewers want it, if they contact you, I'll give it to you. It's free. It was produced not by Hollywood. It was produced by firefighters. And it includes the footage, including the firefighter, the footage of the firefighter communication between him and the command center. You can hear him as plain as day saying, I'm on the impact floor, floor 78. We have 2 fires here. We can control them. And he's comfortable. He's not worrying about the building collapsing. He just walked up 38 floors. And the whole building collapses. Tucker, it's a big lie.
Mr. Netanyahu, let me just ask you this question. What kind of life, what kind of footing, what sort of atmosphere needs to be created in the United States to bring about the kind of action you're talking about? Americans think, despite this, I think many Americans think we're basically at peace in the world and that life needs to be restored to normal. What does life have to be like, and what kind of effort are you talking about? On what scale?
I think this scale is less than the one that I just talked about, because the forces of terror do not have something even approaching the power that Nazi Germany had. They have the same mad designs. So what is required is a military and political effort to galvanize the entire democracies. You have shown in various recent conflicts in the last decade, whether in the Balkans or in the Middle East and elsewhere, that you have the wherewithal, you have enormous military power. And what you have to understand is that you now have enormous backing and goodwill, both in the United States itself and its well-wishers and allies around the world. I think it can be done. I think specifically how one does it is not, I think, the domain of this conversation. I'm sure the leaders of the United States are thinking very carefully about it. I would say, though, that we would be remiss if we do not dismantle the terrorist centers right now, because if we leave them around They'll come back, and they'll come back with greater power. They typically understand and underappreciate the resolve of free societies. But amid the smoking ruins of the Twin Towers, you could see the silhouette of the Statue of Liberty holding that torch of liberty very proudly and very high. It's that flame of liberty that these people want to extinguish. But it is the United States holding that torch with its allies who can wipe out these terrorists, and we must do nothing short of it. We must wipe them out, or they will wipe us out.
Mr. Netanyahu, thank you very much for joining us.
In this video, I will prove to you that Israel is ruling the American government. But wait, how can that even be possible? How can a country of just 9 million people have such a grip on the world's biggest superpower? Why does the US send $3.8 billion every year to Israel, while Americans struggle with healthcare, housing, and student debt? Why do American presidents, Republican and Democrat alike, all stand in line to promise loyalty to Israel no matter what? And why, even after thousands of dead children in Gaza, does Washington continue to send bombs stamped "Made in USA"? The answer lies in history, politics, money, religion, and power. Today, we're going to connect the dots. Let's start with the numbers. Since World War II, the United States has given over $260 billion in aid to Israel, more than to any other country in the entire world. But this isn't just foreign aid, it's a pipeline, a guaranteed, unstoppable stream of US taxpayer money that flows straight into Israel's military machine. Every year, the US sends $3.8 billion to Israel. That's about $10 million every single day. And where does it go? To fighter jets, to bombs, to tanks, to missile defense systems like the Iron Dome. All of it funded by American taxpayers. Take 2016, for example. Under President Obama, the US signed the largest military aid deal in American history, a $38 billion package over 10 years. Locked in, guaranteed, no matter who sits in the White House. That means while Americans argue about how to pay for healthcare or education, Israel never has to worry about where its next warplane is coming from. Here's the catch. Much of this money never even leaves the US. By law, a huge portion of the aid must be spent on American defense companies, giants like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and Raytheon. So Israel gets the weapons, the corporations get the profits, and ordinary Americans, they get the bill. Take the F-35 stealth fighter jet. Each one costs around $80 million. The US has supplied dozens to Israel, making it one of the few countries in the world with access to this next-generation aircraft. Meanwhile, teachers in Detroit buy school supplies out of their own pockets. Or consider Israel's Iron Dome. This missile defense system has received over $2.6 billion in US funding since 2011. That's money that could have rebuilt crumbling US infrastructure. Bridges, roads, and water systems that experts say will cost over $2 trillion to repair. While Israel expands its military arsenal, over 500,000 Americans are homeless. While Israeli cities are shielded by US-funded defense systems, tens of millions of Americans live without health insurance. So ask yourself, why does a nation of 9 million people get unlimited US tax dollars while 330 million Americans are told there's no money for basic needs? This isn't generosity. It's not charity. It's an investment in war, an investment in the military-industrial complex that profits from endless conflict. And behind every dollar, every deal, every jet and missile is a network of politics, lobbying, and influence that keeps this pipeline flowing. So the question is, why? Is this really about strategy? Or is there something far deeper? Money, power, and control driving America's unconditional support for Israel? This is where names matter. One organization stands at the center, AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. For decades, AIPAC has been called the most powerful foreign policy lobby in Washington. Its annual conferences draw thousands of politicians, business leaders, and donors, with U.S. presidents, both Republican and Democrat, showing up to pledge loyalty on stage. But it's not just speeches, it's money. In the 2022 midterms alone, pro-Israel groups poured over $30 million into campaign donations. AIPAC Super PAC, the United Democracy Project, spent millions to defeat candidates who criticized Israel. Even Democrats like Donna Edwards in Maryland or Andy Levin in Michigan, both targeted and beaten after questioning unconditional U.S. aid to Israel. The message is clear. Step out of line and you're gone. Former Congressman Paul Findley once said that voting against Israeli interests is political suicide. He knew firsthand. After serving 22 years in Congress, his career ended once he started questioning U.S. policy toward Israel. And AIPAC isn't alone. There's Christians United for Israel, led by televangelist John Hagee, mobilizing millions of Christian Zionists to pressure Congress. There's the Anti-Defamation League, ADL, presenting itself as a civil rights group, but often lobbying to silence critics of Israel. And dozens of PACs, some with vague names like Pro-Israel America PAC, funnel millions into local elections. Together, these groups form what scholars like John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt have called the Israel Lobby, one of the most powerful forces in Washington, shaping U.S. foreign policy more than any think tank, business lobby, or grassroots movement. And the influence isn't only financial. The lobby has deep reach into the media and academia. Organizations like the Middle East Media Research Institute, or MEMORY, and the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, or YNEP, pump out reports, op-eds, and talking points that frame Israel as America's indispensable ally. This machine works quietly but effectively. Presidents from Clinton to Bush, Obama to Biden, and now Trump have all maintained the same bottom line: billions for Israel, unquestioned support no matter the human cost. But money and lobbying are only half the picture. There's something deeper, a narrative, a story that has been carefully crafted for decades. For decades, Israel has been sold to the American public as the only democracy in the Middle East. From Hollywood movies to school textbooks, Israel is painted as a brave little country surrounded by enemies. Meanwhile, Palestinians are often erased or portrayed as aggressors. Look at U.S. presidents. From Reagan to Bush, Clinton to Obama, Biden to Trump, every one of them repeats the same script. America stands with Israel. Why? Because challenging that narrative would be political suicide. But there's another layer that makes this even stronger: religion. Millions of American evangelicals believe that Israel's survival fulfills biblical prophecy. Groups like Christians United for Israel, led by Pastor John Hagee, openly preach that supporting Israel is God's will. That means millions of votes tied to religion, a powerful bloc no president wants to lose. In 2018, when Trump moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, it wasn't just for Israel, it was also a gift to evangelicals. So we have money, we have lobbying, we have religion, but what about consequences? What happens when U.S. leaders keep supporting Israel no matter the cost? Here's the contradiction. America claims to defend democracy and human rights, yet it bankrolls a system of apartheid, illegal settlements, and endless bombings. Every missile that hits Gaza, paid for with American tax dollars. Every hospital destroyed, linked back to Washington. And this is why so many are asking, who's ruling who? Is America guiding Israel, or is Israel guiding America? Former U.S. officials like General David Petraeus have even admitted blind support for Israel is fueling anti-American sentiment worldwide. In other words, this isn't just about Palestine. It's about America's future. So, is Israel ruling the American government? The evidence is there. The billions in aid, the lobbying machine, the narrative control, the religious influence, and the political cost of saying no. A country of 9 million people dictating policies of a superpower of 330 million. But here's the real question. How long can this last? As more Americans wake up to the truth, as global outrage grows, silence becomes impossible. And when that silence finally breaks, the question won't just be about Israel, it'll be about America itself. Whose interests is Washington really serving? Its people or